Welcome to week 7 of evidence. This week we will cover the topic of witness competency. We'll cover the cases from your casebook from pages 697 to 726. The first case that we covered is Rock v. Arkansas. This is a Supreme Court of the United States case from 1987. As background, we have a defendant that was charged with manslaughter for allegedly killing her husband. The defendant's husband was found in their apartment with a bullet wound to his chest. The defendant told an officer that her husband had choked her, thrown her against a wall, and then hit her. The defendant said that after her husband had hit her, she shot him, and she couldn't remember anything further. The defendant was then hypnotized by a psychologist who recorded their sessions. After the hypnosis, the defendant remembered she didn't have her finger on the trigger, and the gun then discharged when her husband had grabbed her arm. A gun expert testified at trial that the weapon was defective and could have been misfired if it was jolted. The trial judge excluded this hypnotically refreshed memory, and the Arkansas Supreme Court affirmed. At issue is whether the trial court erred in limiting the defendant's testimony to only the pre-hypnotized events or testimony, and making the hypnotically refreshed memory inadmissible. The Supreme Court reversed and sent the case back to the trial court for an individualized assessment of the defendant's reliability, holding that a per se rule excluding the defendant's hypnotically refreshed memory infringed impermissibly on her right to testify. Our next case is State v. Moore. This is a Supreme Court of New Jersey case from 2006. As background, the victim of a sexual assault was not able to provide enough information on her attacker to make an identification. The victim then went under hypnosis and afterwards was able to identify the defendant. At issue at trial was whether the victim's trial testimony was admissible, given that her recollection was hypnotically refreshed. This court reversed its own prior ruling from 1981, which was State v. Heard, now finding that the hypnotically refreshed testimony of a witness in a criminal trial is generally inadmissible. The court recognized that under Rock v. Arkansas, our prior case, a criminal defendant does have a constitutional right to testify after being hypnotized. However, here we're dealing with a victim or another witness, not the defendant. The court discussed that since 1981, there has been a shift in the scientific understanding of hypnosis, and now finding that hypnotized witnesses have a false sense of confidence in their recollections and often make increased errors in memory. The next case is United States v. DWB. This is United States Navy Marine Corps Court from Criminal Appeals from 2015. As background, we have a defendant that was accused of molesting his young daughter. At 12 years old, the daughter's mother brought her to a therapist who used non-standard techniques. At one of her sessions, using one of these techniques, the daughter recalled an incident of sexual abuse by her father when she was 7 years old. The defendant moved to suppress this testimony, and the trial court and the appeals court agreed. At issue is whether or not the trial court abused its discretion in excluding the daughter's testimony. This court held that no, the trial court did not abuse its discretion. The court had doubts about the validity of this therapist's techniques, and the court adopted a totality of the circumstances approach, where testimony like this is admissible only if it is reasonably likely that the memories are at least as reliable as the ordinary human memory. Next, we'll cover the casebook hypos 1 through 4 on page 721 as a class. Our last case is Warger v. Showers. This is a Supreme Court of the United States case from 2014. As background, we have a plaintiff who sued for injuries he suffered while riding his motorcycle while he was struck from behind by a truck driver, which was the defendant. The jury returned a verdict for the defendant. After trial, one of the jurors told the plaintiff's lawyer that during deliberations, one of the jurors had spoke about how if her daughter had been sued after being involved in a fatal car accident, it would have ruined her, meaning that she was sympathizing with the defendant. The plaintiff then moved for a new trial, contending that the juror had lied during voir dire and saying that she could be unbiased. The trial court denied this motion. At issue was whether, under the federal rules 606B, the plaintiff was barred for a motion for new trial. The Supreme Court held unanimously that the plaintiff's motion for a new trial should be denied. The court held that under 606B, when inquiring into the validity of a verdict, a juror cannot testify about statements made or incidents that occurred during jury deliberations, though, as always, there are some limited exceptions to this rule.